DC co-publishers Dan DiDio and Jim Lee recently hosted a special Q&A with fans at the Burbank Library. We were on hand to capture the full conversation, and as usual, Dan and Jim did not disappoint. Check it out.
If you had to pick some of your favorites, can you guys say what were the top 3 for each of you that was this has to be on the list?
1986 was a very pivotal year for me as a comics fan. That was actually the year I kind of almost gave up on comics. And then Dark Knight Returns came out, and that completely brought me back into the world of comics because it was so different from everything I grew up on. The narrative, the paper quality, the coloring, and it really just opened my eyes to the potential of the art form and truly inspired me to get into the world of comic books and to try to figure out how to break into comics.
And both of you guys mentioned when you're talking about essentials that it's taking a character in a new direction or seeing them in a different light. Yeah. For me, Kingdom Come was one of those books where it was I'd never seen those characters in that way before. What do you think it takes to be able to take these characters that so many people love, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and say, I'm gonna put a new spin on it, and then it becomes an essential?
What it really is, it's a total understanding of what the characters are, what they stand for. I mean, our characters, they take on ideals and personalities that people want to see in themselves. You know, you always hear about DC characters inspiring people and such like that. So they stand for something very particular. Mm-hmm. So as a writer, you would want to challenge yourself to deconstruct that and to examine what that character does mean and put them in through challenges to question whether or not they're deserving of that adulation.
Well, do you also kind of look at when they transcend to a different kind of genre where it's okay, Killing Joke, we're gonna get the animated film, or some of the books where it's come out and people are we wanna do this for DC TV, or we wanna put this in the film. Is that something that when that moment happens, you're all right, this is one of the essentials, or do you guys kind of pick them out and then say, I feel like these are the ones that will work really well?
You know what it is on that? It's what happens is that we're not deciding it. It's the fans deciding what's essential.
Yeah.
You know, that fan who becomes the writer or that fan that becomes the producer and remembers that story and gets that opportunity to work on something and then pulls out something that they truly enjoyed reading growing up or just recently and finding a way to work it in there. You find more and more of our stories and materials work their way into the movies and television, not because we're pushing them in, but because people remember them and want to work them in because they have ideas in their mind on how their movies or shows work. And the best way to execute them is by using those elements from the comics that they read and putting them in their product.
Are those kind of the Vertigo stories too, the ones where maybe you guys are a little bit more surprised what does hit with fans, where it's something like Preacher, where initially you're hearing the pitch for that and you're okay, let's try this out and see. Is that where there's a little more surprise as to what the fans gravitate towards?
Yeah, I mean, certainly when it started, it really pushed the limits of what, comics was always seen historically as a kid's medium, and it definitely broadened that definition of what comic books could do and change the industry. It was just funny, talking about Preacher or a lot of these books, they really challenged what people thought could be published as comic books. Now to the point where a lot of those creators that were doing these really cutting edge, really edgy Vertigo comics are now really running the mainstream comic books. They're your mainstream writers. So I think it's really interesting to see where Vertigo is going to go in the future, because where do you go from there? If what was edgy is now your mainstream, what do you do to keep pressing the edges to kind of keep it trailblazing and happening and exciting?
For sure. Are there any kind of, for people who are sitting in here now, things that you guys would say, keep your eyes open for this? What are some of the ones that you're most excited to see the reaction from fans?
We have this Lois and Clark book that's coming out of Convergence. We have Telos coming out of a Convergence and a Titans Hunt book. And I think these books are going to be books to watch in October. But again, you're going to start to see the universe coming back together in really interesting ways. These books are leading the charge. We have this thing called the Robin War coming up at the end of the year. Also very important to the DC universe. And then one of the things that I think we're most excited about inside our building right now is the work that Jeff's been doing on the Darkseid War. I watched him fall in love with these characters, and you can see that on the page. And I think what's great about that is you see what's happening in there. That also will start working its way into DCU. And that gets me super excited because I love world building. I think that's what we do best, and it's fun to get back in that game again.
With unique artwork and a story unlike anything else coming out of DC, Dr. Fate is one of the new essentials that you should totally be reading. And the Doctor is in at your local comic shop with issue 4 on shelves today. And if you like this video and want more DC All Access, make sure you click subscribe.